What's going on, guys? Unknown Player here, and today we'll be talking about a bunch of really cool things that you didn't previously know about the Wrath of the Machine raid, some of the Easter eggs and secrets, and concept art that has never been shown off before, and the meaning behind a lot of things you'll see in this Risevine raid. So today Bungie did a raid long for Wrath of the Machine, where they went through the raid on Twitch with a bunch of designers who made the encounters, and they talked about why things are the way they are, some really interesting things that you wouldn't have known previously, and also some concept arts of bosses and locations that haven't been shown off before. So this video is going to be rounding up absolutely everything you want to know from the stream. I watched the whole thing and collected all the really cool stuff I thought you guys would enjoy, and I'd say this is probably the best raid long that they've done in my opinion. A massive amount of things that I and any fan of the game will definitely find interesting, so let's go over them. So one of the first things they mentioned is that when Jason Jones, who is a co-founder of Bungie, actually playtested the raid, he gave feedback that he wanted the Seaver charges actually make sense, the things you throw to take down their shields. He wanted those to make sense and fit into the game, instead of these random orbs that came out of nowhere and let you damage bosses. So they went to the combat team and actually had the dregs throw them at you as their grenades, and you might have noticed that the grenades that the dregs will throw at you, those are actually the Seaver charges. The dregs didn't previously throw them at all, so they had them simply do it just for this purpose, for the Seaver charges making sense. So they act as the Devil Splicer's grenades made of Seaver, which you're basically using on them. They also said that this intro section for the raid, where you open the door, was much harder initially. It was actually a darkness zone, so if someone died, you had to wait 30 seconds to revive them, or if it was hard mode, you were pretty much dead. You had no revives, so they thought this is way too hard, and they thought to make it easier and a more fun intro to get into the raid first, and dying wouldn't have such a massive impact. They also showed this early concept image of what the old opening to the raid at first looked like. They felt that it didn't feel like a grand entrance to something like a raid, so they had another concept art drawn up, and this is what they settled on. It's basically the top pod of one of the colony ships in the Cosmodrome that's been ripped off, and the idea is that Devil Splicers basically took it off and used it as a gate for the raid to protect their kind of dungeons. And the snowy version of the Cosmodrome, you'll see the actual ship that's been ripped off of, and it's all flaming. There's only 2 pods on there now, but the original Cosmodrome before this, you can see the ship still has 3 sections. So next up, the cranes that produce the Seaver charges, those are actually designed to be like spiders spinning a web, and that makes sense of course because the Fallen are based off arachnids, and they're basically spider-like aliens. Also, the tanks in the wall of the jumping puzzle, those are suspended there as if they're stuck in a spider web, just how bugs be stuck there. So it's another example of the Fallen being arachnids, and one of those things that you wouldn't really notice initially, but definitely makes a lot of sense with that spider theme. Now, looking at Vosik, they mentioned how a lot of people regard this as one of the hardest encounters in the Wrath of the Machine raid, even more difficult than Axis in the hard mode version of it, and actually a month before it launched, this was a lot harder apparently. Before it launched, they toned down the health of the actual monitors, and also the amount of them you need to shoot, and also they stopped spawning the ads when the charges drop, because apparently it was really difficult to do both at the same time, DPS the monitors, and also handle a bunch of ads around the room. And one of the initial ideas for challenge mode for Vosik was going to be that more monitors would actually spawn, and if you could shoot them all, you'd have a chance to not run to the rooms, and it would just stop his kind of like Seaver density phase. But they thought it wasn't as fun to not run to the rooms, which is one of the most fun parts of the encounter, and also shooting objects like the monitors isn't as fun either. So they thought about throwing the charges at the doors instead as an extra challenge. So this is an early concept art of Vosik, which is really cool to see. These bosses used to be called the Machine Lords, and this was their design. You might also remember the initial Risevine reveal trailer. The Vosik's name is also called the Machinist, and again it ties the idea of him being a Machine Lord, and they scavenge items from around the Cosmodrome, so you can see he's got a car door as his armor plate, which is just really weird. So moving on, we've got the Siege engine. Now initially they wanted a Mad Max theme if you've seen that film, but they originally had this version drawn up without the snow. It was too barren and ugly to look at, so covering it in snow they thought gave it more character. Now in terms of the Siege engine itself, apparently it's the most animated object in the game in terms of its geometry and its memory it takes up, and it takes up most of your console's resources, really pushing the limit apparently, and you can tell by the dropping frame rates if you play this section. Your PS4 might start crashing here. Initially, they thought the dregs in this opening section were a bit too easy, so for a random test, they actually swapped them all to captains. Every single dreg was instead a captain, but apparently that was unbelievably hard, and they switched it right back. They also tried a lot of different things for the hard mode of the Siege engine encounter. Apparently they were too difficult and boring to play against, and as a joke, they actually thought of plopping a spider tank there, which actually worked out, and it's actually a special version of the spider tank, which has got less health than the others do, which makes sense because it is really easy to kill. Also, this is a super early and basic concept art of the Siege engine, which is really fun to look at. You can notice the captain with the guitar, an actual special double guitar because of his 4 arms, and that represents the scale, and also Mexus the engineer, who is sat up there. Now, going down further into the raid, the binary puzzle section of the Outbreak Prime quest was actually apparently a lot harder initially. They had a really complicated step between reading the monitors and also knowing what canister to step on. So if you think that bit is difficult now, it actually used to be way more complex. Also, this big red staircase is actually here to separate the Axis and Siege Engine areas. The Siege Engine takes up so much memory, like I said, and this separates the two locations, so the game can despawn the Siege Engine area and it's not going to take up any more memory or resources when you're doing the Axis encounters. And to make the walk between the two areas more interesting, they've got this really awesome scenery as you go down into the huge Perfection Chamber, the big diamond, which looks so cool. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the raid. So the next fun fact is that Axis actually used to be called Mexis. The final boss used to be called Mexis. They thought Axis was a better name, so they changed it, but instead kept the name Mexis and put him on the Siege Engine. That's the boss you'll encounter on top of there. So he's the engineer you face, and he's still in the game. Now look at the Axis Part 1 encounter. The turrets on hard mode were initially a part of normal mode as well, but apparently it was way too difficult. And also that one major vandal that spawns with a load of health at the beginning of the waves, there used to be two major vandals that would spawn right at the exact same time as the Scorch Captain, but they thought that was too difficult, so instead only spawned one, and they pushed him back further so that you could have time to kill him and then get the Scorch Captain as well. So talking about Axis Phase 2, this is a really strange part. One of the devs that used to playtest for the Golgoroth fight in the King's Fall raid, he used to jump over Golgoroth when they'd wipe and shotgun him in the back, and he said that one day he wanted to make a raid encounter where he'd actually do that. So that is why you jump on Axis' back and dunk him, simply because of that raid design who wanted to throw that kind of funny Easter egg in there. So next up, Axis actually doesn't count as a 3 of coins because he isn't actually an ultra boss. He is apparently a vehicle. He is completely a machine, so apparently he doesn't have a chance to drop 3 of coins. And then on top of that, some weapons have the Disciplinarian or Whirlwind's Curse perk that do extra damage to the Fallen, like the Raid weapons, the Outbreak Prime, and Devil's Dawn. Those do extra damage to the Fallen, but those perks don't actually work on Axis either, because he isn't actually a Fallen anymore. The story behind him is that he's fully converted into a machine, and he's no longer Fallen, so he is 100% Sieve machine now, and he doesn't count as a Fallen enemy, which is really cool to see that extra bit of attention to detail that Bungie put into Axis. So the final thing they said before they ended the stream was a funny tease about unsolved Easter eggs and secrets. They each asked, has the raid been plundered of all of its secrets, and have they been found by the community? And then they responded saying, the raid has definitely been plundered, but who knows if there's more to discover. There's always another door and other chests in our raids. They all laughed about it, and it did kind of seem like he was joking, but he could actually be suggesting that there are some undiscovered secrets in the Wrath of the Machine raid, or possibly some other older raids that haven't been found yet, but who knows if there actually are some. Of course there are exotics that we still know of that are yet to come into the game, but we'll have to wait and see. So there we have it. That is a complete roundup of all those cool fun facts from the stream. If you guys enjoyed me putting them all together, then a like rating would be much appreciated. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.